So I think what you're seeing here is the formation of what I refer to as the so-called red-green alliance. This alliance between Marxists and Islamists of various stripes there, and we've seen this kind of play out a few times over the past decade or so. So I think back pretty often to a woman named Linda Sarsour, who was the head of the so-called Women's March back in 2017. This is a group of feminists who were marching in ostensible opposition to the incoming fascist dictatorship, in their own words, of President Donald Trump. Now, Linda Sarsour is a Muslim who wears a hijab, who also has a long and colorful history of apologizing on behalf of Sharia law. So her Twitter history at that time had some very peculiar tweets talking about how Sharia law is very favorable when it comes to maxing out your credit card and bank loans and interest payments there. But, no one thought to ask Linda Sarsour what Sharia law has to say about, feminism or women's. I mean, she was leading the Women's March after all there, right? But it's very much kind of an enemy of my enemy is my friend type situation there, because there's very, very little that Marxists and Islamists have in common other than that they want to destroy the West. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of this exercise there, is to eradicate any biblical Judeo-Christian taint there. And again, it really does always start with the Jews, because the enduring nature of the Jewish people going back thousands of years, to me, that this is really the original reason that anti-Semitism exists. Because the fact that Jewish people endure, that we keep to our laws, we keep to our particular relationship with God and so forth there. This is an enduring, nagging anchor on the Western conscience. It is a perpetual reminder that there is such thing as truth, and that there is such thing as this small particular group of people that are going to live their entire lives in accordance with that truth. So if your goal is to implement a relativistic society, a post-truth, post-modern society there, again, for very similar reasons, it makes a lot of sense that you actually start with the Jewish people, and likewise, the Christians will come next, because they are also, Christianity, of course, is also a biblical religion, but it really does always start with the Jews. But this red-green alliance, now we're seeing it come again here in New York City with the likely incoming mayoralty of Zoran Mamdani, who himself is a far, far, far left quasi-Marxist, full-on, to me, he seems like a full-on Marxist, frankly. So he's a Marxist, but also he's a Muslim. He's not an Islamist. He doesn't want to implement Sharia law, but he does take the identity politics aspect of his Islamic background there, at least when it comes to his anti-Zionism and his anti-Semitism there. So this really is kind of the threat that I see it, is this notion of the red-green alliance there. The question arises, is the United States, is Western civilization as a whole going to fight back against this red-green alliance there? And to me, that question can only be answered by doing the things that I call for it to do in the book, which is to basically double down and recover its ecumenical Judeo-Christian biblical inheritance, because that is what made us great as Western people, and that is the only thing truly that will make us great once again.